There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes before your time, not the exhaustion of a long day, the exhaustion of a soul that's seen too much, felt too much, carried too much before your body even knew what aging meant, of childhood that ended before it started, of responsibilities you shouldn't have understood yet, of conversations where you sounded 40 at 14 and you realize you never really got to be young at all. You didn't plan this. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to skip being a kid. It happened slowly. One adult conversation you understood too well, one crisis you had to manage alone, until eventually you stopped relating to people your own age, stopped laughing at things that should have been funny, stopped showing up to events where everyone seemed so carefree, and you felt like you were watching from behind glass. This is the psychology of people who feel older than their age. You look at people your own age and realize you have nothing to talk about. Their problems feel trivial, their excitement feels foreign, their drama feels exhausting. When someone your age complains about something small, "I'm so stressed, I have to pick between two parties this weekend," you don't relate. You're thinking about bills, about family crises, about responsibilities they don't even know exist yet. The difference is, you're not judging them, you're envying them. You wish you could care about things that simple. This didn't happen overnight. You didn't wake up world weary. You woke up after years. Years of being the kid who took care of siblings while other kids played, who understood the weight of financial stress before you understood multiplication, who learned to read emotions, manage moods, anticipate needs because someone had to keep the peace. You were the responsible one, the one adults confided in, who got praised for being so mature, while inside you were screaming because you just wanted to be a kid. Then something broke. Maybe a parent got sick and you became the caretaker. Maybe divorce turned you into a mediator. Maybe addiction in the house made you the adult when adults couldn't be. You had your own crisis, your own moment when childhood ended abruptly, your own realization that no one was going to protect you, so you'd have to protect yourself. You looked around for the adults to handle it. Silence. Maybe one person noticed you were struggling. Maybe someone said, "You're so strong," like being strong wasn't just another word for being alone. Maybe they were all just dealing with their own stuff. It wasn't that no one helped. It's that you realized in that moment how early you'd been forced to grow up. That's when everything changed. Every interaction with peers became alienating. You didn't want to feel separate, but couldn't help feeling ancient. How do they not see how complicated everything is? What am I supposed to do with this exhaustion? The math stopped making sense. You were carrying weight your peers couldn't even perceive while they were still allowed to be light. So you stopped pretending. People noticed. Of course they noticed. When you stop laughing at their jokes, when you decline invitations to things that feel meaningless, when you sit quietly while everyone else seems so alive, people notice. They just don't notice why. "You're so serious now. What happened to you?" They say it like an accusation, like you owe them the version of yourself that got to be carefree. They want the old you back, the one who still had lightness. They don't realize that version never existed, or if it did, it died too young. They don't realize you're not serious by choice. You're serious because life made you that way before you had any say in the matter. Your nervous system figured something out before your conscious mind did. It learned a pattern. Every time you tried to be young, every time you tried to be playful, every time you let your guard down, eventually something would happen that reminded you that you couldn't afford to be a child. The crisis that needed you, the responsibility that fell on your shoulders, the moment when being carefree became dangerous because no one else was watching out for you. Your brain started anticipating disaster. You'd be at a party, trying to have fun, and somewhere in the back of your mind a quiet voice would ask, "What's going wrong at home right now? Who needs me? What am I supposed to be worried about?" It wasn't anxiety. It was pattern recognition. So you started controlling the one variable you could control, your readiness. If life was going to keep demanding you be older than you were, you'd just become that. Childhood felt dangerous when you were the only one who saw the cracks. Growing up early hurt less when you initiated it yourself. At least this way you were prepared. People call it lost innocence. You call it forced evolution. It's not dramatic. There's no single moment where you announce, "I'm done being young." It's quieter than that. It's staying home while friends go out, because their fun feels hollow when you know what real problems are. It's having conversations with adults that flow naturally, while conversations with peers feel like speaking different languages. It's preferring solitude to socializing because at least alone you don't have to pretend to relate. It's watching everyone your age live the youth you never got, and feeling like you're watching from the other side of a window you can't open. It's the slow separation, or sometimes it's the sudden realization. Either way, you're different. You run into someone from your past. They ask what you've been up to. You give the socially acceptable answer. Inside, you're thinking, we were never the same age. I was born older. I've been carrying decades you never had to carry. You were allowed to be young. I was busy surviving. They never saw you. You just performed a version of yourself that seemed age appropriate, while inside you felt ancient. The truth nobody tells you. You were already old in rooms full of young people. Being physically isolated just made the feeling match the reality. Some people think you're depressed. The reality is more complicated than that. You're not sad. You're tired. Tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. A tired that comes from years of carrying more than you should have had to carry. They want to fix you. They want the conversation where you explain what happened, where you pinpoint the trauma, where you give them something concrete to understand. But how do you explain that you don't remember ever feeling young? How do you explain that your childhood feels like something you observed rather than experienced, that you were already exhausted before you had language for exhaustion? So you give them nothing. Let them write whatever story they need about why you're like this. You're not reading it. Here's the part that surprises you. It doesn't hurt like you thought it would. The missed experiences, the youth you never had, the carefree years that passed you by. You expected it to feel devastating. Instead, it just feels like who you are. Old became your natural state. This pattern didn't start in adolescence. Somewhere back in early childhood, you learned that being young wasn't safe. Maybe a parent who needed you to be their emotional support before you could even tie your shoes. Maybe a home where chaos required a steady hand and you were the only one offering it. Maybe you were the kid who learned to read faces, manage crises, suppress your own needs because someone had to hold everything together and the adults couldn't. Maybe you watched your parents struggle and took on their stress as your own. Maybe you experienced loss early, death or divorce or disaster that aged you overnight. Maybe you were the child of parents who treated you like a peer, who vented to you about adult problems, teaching you that childhood was a luxury you didn't get to have. Or maybe it was subtler than that. Maybe your needs just weren't prioritized. You'd want to play, and the response was, "Not now, I need you to watch your sister." Or, "Stop being so loud, I have a headache." Or just a tired, "Go entertain yourself." While you absorbed the lesson that your youth was inconvenient, you learned that being young was selfish, that having childish needs was asking too much, that the family needed you to be older, wiser, more capable than you had any right to be. Maybe you were the kid who stopped asking for bedtime stories because mom was too tired, who stopped having tantrums because dad couldn't handle it, who learned to comfort others before you understood what comfort felt like. Those early experiences didn't just age you, they shaped you. Your brain, still forming, still trying to understand the world, absorbed a fundamental lesson. Childhood is a privilege you can't afford. Being young means being vulnerable. Someone needs to be the adult, and it's going to have to be you. So your mind adapted. It built maturity before you even knew what you were building. You became responsible not because you wanted to be, but because you had to be. Self-sufficient not as a personality trait, but as survival. You learned to need nothing because needing meant burdening people who couldn't handle burdens. You learned to expect nothing because expecting meant disappointment. You became the kid who didn't ask for help, who figured things out alone, who stopped talking about your day because "how was school" was a formality, not an actual question. You became skilled at reading tension, predicting needs, knowing when to make yourself useful or invisible. Those early years became your blueprint. They drew the map of what life requires, what maturity means, what you have to sacrifice to keep everything from falling apart. Every year that followed just confirmed the lesson. You don't get to be young. You have to be ready. You have to be older. Your brain wired itself around this truth. Youth became dangerous. Carefree became irresponsible. Playfulness became a risk you couldn't afford to take. So when you feel older than your age, you're not being dramatic. You're being consistent with everything your life has taught you about what's required of you. The comments sting anyway. You're too serious. You need to lighten up. You're wasting your youth. Like you haven't tried. Like you haven't spent years attempting to be different, to feel lighter, to access whatever part of you should still be young. Like you haven't forced yourself to go to parties, to laugh at jokes, to pretend you care about things that feel meaningless, hoping the feeling would come. It didn't come. The friend you tried to relate to kept talking about their newest relationship drama, and you felt like you were speaking to someone from another planet. The event you attended where everyone seemed so alive with trivial joy and you felt dead inside. The family member who told you to just have fun, like fun, was a switch you could flip instead of a feeling that left you decades ago. Same attempt, different setting, identical result. You don't fit. You remember the specific moments. The birthday party at 12 where you couldn't enjoy it because you were worried about mom's drinking. The school dance where everyone was carefree and you were calculating if you had enough money for groceries that week. The summer that should have been freedom, but you spent taking care of younger siblings while your friends were being kids. You remember showing up to their milestone moments, celebrating their normal lives, listening to their age-appropriate problems. Then when you tried to share what you were actually dealing with, suddenly everyone got uncomfortable. That's so heavy. I don't know what to say. Have you tried just not worrying about it? So you stopped trying, not because you're broken, because you finally started listening to what your experience has been screaming at you for years. You're alone in this. The weight you carry, the age you feel, the exhaustion that never lifts. People your age can't understand it. You're spending energy trying to connect with people who are living a different lifetime. You started doing the math. How many times did you relate to someone your age versus someone older? How many conversations felt natural versus forced? How many times did you have to pretend to care about trivial things? And how many times did anyone ask about what you actually carried? The data was devastating. You weren't connecting with your peers. You were performing youth while feeling ancient. People don't understand why you seem so detached from your own generation. They don't see that for you. Feeling old isn't a choice. It's the result of years of being forced to operate beyond your years. It's not about hating youth. It's about never having access to it in the first place. You became a student of age gaps. You can spot the difference now within minutes of meeting someone. The peer who's still figuring out who they are. You see it in their lightness, their ability to care about small things, their lack of weight behind their eyes. The person who's lived an age-appropriate life. You notice how they talk about problems that would have been luxuries for you to worry about. The relationships that feel easy are with people decades older who've actually lived enough to match where your mind already is. You feel it instantly. Recognition. That weight they carry that mirrors yours. You see it coming from the first conversation. You'll connect better with someone 20 years older than someone your own age. You know the signs of someone who got to be young. They have spontaneity. They make plans without calculating every risk. They laugh without that edge of exhaustion. They haven't learned yet that life takes more than it gives. You've watched enough people your age live normal youth that you stopped being bitter about it. Now you just accept it. You're from different worlds that happen to share a birth year. Some people say you're missing out. They're wrong. You can't miss what you never had access to. You didn't give up on youth. Youth gave up on you the moment life demanded you be older than you were. You gave up on pretending that performing carefree is the same as feeling it. You gave up on relationships with peers where you have to hide how heavy everything feels. You're not the problem. The problem is that for years you tried to fit into an age bracket your mind left behind before you had a choice. You tried to be young when you felt 40. You tried to relate to people living a stage of life you never got to have. You tried to care about things that felt meaningless when you were busy surviving, until one day you couldn't anymore. Feeling older than your age isn't giving up on living. It's refusing to pretend you feel something you don't. It's saying, if youth is this carefree thing I was supposed to have, if this lightness and spontaneity and freedom to make mistakes, then I never had it, and I'm done pretending I did. People call you jaded. You're not jaded. You're just realistic about what life has shown you. You're done performing youthful energy for people who can't see how exhausted you actually are. You're done being the young person who feels ancient and having no one understand why. They say you're too old for your age. You know the truth. You were made old. There's a difference. The oldest you ever felt wasn't now. It was then. It was being 8 and understanding adult problems. It was being 13 and managing family crises. It was being 16 and carrying responsibility that should have been decades away. It was the gap between what childhood was supposed to feel like and what yours actually felt like. Always aware, rarely carefree, constantly responsible, never quite young enough. The physical aging didn't create this. It just keeps confirming what you've felt since the beginning. You scroll through old photos sometimes, birthday parties, school events, family gatherings that looked age appropriate from the outside. You don't miss those moments. You miss the version of yourself who might have actually felt young during them, who thought if you just acted right, smiled enough, pretended hard enough, the feeling would come, who hadn't yet accepted that some people age mentally long before their bodies catch up. That version of you almost broke trying to be something you weren't. You exhausted yourself trying to feel young. You burned out attempting to relate to an age group your mind had already left. You nearly lost yourself trying to force a lightness that life had already taken. You saved yourself by accepting it. People see it as giving up. You know it's acceptance, accepting that you feel older because you were forced to be older, accepting that your timeline doesn't match others, accepting that you can't force yourself to feel young any more than you can force yourself to forget everything that aged you. Maybe one day you'll feel your age. Maybe time will catch up to where your mind already is. Maybe you'll reach an age where your exhaustion finally makes sense to others, where your seriousness is expected, where people stop telling you to lighten up. Maybe you'll find people who feel the same ancient weight and you won't have to explain. Maybe. But right now, you're protecting the part of yourself that survived by growing up early. You're honoring that you did what you had to do to make it through. Because pretending to feel young when you feel old might break what's left of you, and then you'd have nothing, not even the truth of your own experience. Feeling older than your age isn't the absence of youth. It's the presence of survival. It's your mind finally saying enough pretending, enough performing, enough trying to fit into an age bracket that never fit you, enough shrinking your reality to make others comfortable. You're not jaded. You're not broken. You're not missing out on youth you could still access if you just tried harder. You're not the problem they made you believe you were. Every time someone told you to act your age, or stop being so serious, or just enjoy being young, implying you were choosing this, you're just someone who learned too early that life doesn't wait for you to be ready. Someone who was forced to grow up before growing up was an option. Someone who feels ancient because they've lived more emotionally than their years should contain. They'll say you're wasting your youth like it's something you have, like it's sitting there, waiting for you to claim it, like if you just changed your attitude, everything would feel different. Let them say it. You know the truth. You never had youth to waste. You had survival, and survival ages you in ways that birthdays never could. You're not running from youth. You're standing in the reality of never having had it, where your age is just a number that doesn't match your experience, where the exhaustion isn't laziness, it's the accumulation of decades of emotional weight carried in a body that's still technically young. This is the psychology of feeling older than your age. It's not about hating youth, it's about never having access to it in the first place. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most honest thing you can do isn't pretending to feel young. It's accepting that you feel exactly as old as life made you. You're not jaded. You're experienced. You're not closed off to youth. You were excluded from it. You're not giving up on living. You're refusing to perform a lightness you've never felt. Maybe that makes you hard to relate to. Maybe it makes you someone peers don't understand. Someone they use as an example of being too serious or no fun. But you know something they don't. That ancient feeling kept you alive. That seriousness is what allowed you to survive what would have broken a truly young person. That distance from your peers is what gave you space to carry what you had to carry. For now, you're here, in the body that says one age while your mind whispers another, in the space between who you're supposed to be and who life forced you to become. It's not the youth people wanted for you, but it's the truth of what you lived. You're not old. You were aged, and maybe for the first time in your life, you're finally honest about it.